Everybody, welcome to the next episode on Sharmila Talkies. In this episode, I will be talking to Siddarth Jain, who is an IIT pass out with 7 years of experience and currently runs a second startup called Dr.Droid. Hey Siddarth, very good evening. How are you doing today?
Great, Sharmila. How are you?
I'm doing good too. Thank you. Thank you, Siddarth, for quickly agreeing to give a talk about your career on on Sharmila Talkies here. Maybe we could get started with a quick introduction about yourself, Siddarth, and then we can get going.
Yeah, sure. Happy to do that. So, yeah, like you said, I'm Siddarth, known as Sid Jain, informally in my circle, and I've been born and raised in Bangalore, so I've seen this city evolve significantly from the time when it was not the tech startup hub to now when it is, right? And yeah, I did my engineering from IIT Delhi, so that was the time when I got out of Bangalore, got to see the place outside, and after my engineering, it's been a long career since then, so I can jump into that. It's been 7 years of startup experience, from starting up to working at VCs, etc. You want me to jump into that?
Yeah,
Or
exactly. I know, passing out of an IIT is a big thing, right? And like you mentioned, in 7 years, you've had two startups. So while you could have landed in any lucrative job that you wanted to, why startups and quickly the second one as well? Maybe you should talk more around that.
Well, so the way it started is like, in 2015, 16, I was in my final year at college, and I thought, should I even sit for placements? Should I even take up a job? I was having double minds about that, and I decided to not do that, instead do my own startup. So I interacted with someone who was working on an idea that I was already thinking about, which was like, can you get some doorstep delivery right from your neighborhood for anything and everything that you want, right? Like you just text someone and you can get it. And I met that guy in Delhi, and it just clicked, and we decided to start working on it. The startup back then was called Hoodoo, and
Mm-hmm.
worked a year on that, close to a year on that, realized, oh damn, that business does not make money so easily. And we were bootstrapped, young folks just trying to hustle around, and realize, oh damn, it's not working out. So I'm like out of my college now, and done with my first startup, and things haven't gone anywhere much, and I don't even have a job. So yeah, I was also asking the same question, that why did I do that when I could actually, have a lucrative job. So yeah, but then now if you look at it, 7 years down the line, I just started up again. I close to a year ago, I started up again. This time the company is called Dr.Droid, and I'm building it with one of my friends from previous startup. So yeah, if you're curious what happened in between, was I first joined a company, which was a consulting firm, a great fun place to work at. And it was a uh, like a management consulting firm. Did like a year there and realized, okay, this is good work, but I don't feel so challenged every day as I want to. And
Mm-hmm.
that's when I decided to switch gears. One of my friends told me that his startup where he was working was open to hiring someone for a chief of staff role. And I interviewed with the founder, really enjoyed that conversation, and moved to that startup, which is like a 50 people team when I joined them. And worked there like for 3 years. Started off in a business role, funnily, and then a year and a half down the line, where I was the chief of staff, and I was like, okay, this is great, but can I use my understanding of data to go a little deeper and probably build something of myself? So I went into data science there, and I became like a I was a part of the tech team there. I was basically a data scientist there for a couple of years. After that, worked a lot on modeling. So basically, the data-driven decisions that I was doing using Excel, I was like, ended up building a couple of models there to do the supply demand matching. So this startup was called Shadowfax, and it was like a food delivery startup, B2B food delivery. So worked there, worked on the supply demand matching. It was super fun, like a small startup team, and we were doing like lakhs of orders every day. So it was so much fun working with those smart bunch of people. I knew that it's always going to be the startup ecosystem that I want to move around. And finish like three and a half years there. Wanted to get out of there and like do something new.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, that time nothing new actually happened. But what did happen was I got an opportunity at a VC firm called Axel. So I was like, okay, I've been on the entrepreneur side. I've worked as a startup at a startup as an employee, and why not explore the VC world, and joined Axel. This is right around the remote world. So like when remote hit, COVID hit the world, and I was there. So I started working at Axel. 2 years flew like, just like that. So many Zoom calls, so many founder calls, board meetings, and every day I would just look at all of these seed stage startups, and it was like a tremendous learning again for me, that how all of these founders are working hard and trying to innovate in different industries, from fintech, which is like Nitin Gupta. Uni was one of the companies that I used to work with, to other startups that I saw across SaaS and B2B e-commerce. So I was like super inspired and learned a lot there, and decided to get out of there and start building by myself again. So that was the origin of how I basically landed up starting again.
Okay, that's quite an interesting one, right? Looks like you have passion for challenges, right? And that's what's kind of driving you and taking you places, right? Because you were very sure that even during your college days, like you mentioned, you never went for placements.
Yeah, that was like, people say if that was the right decision or not. I don't know. Like I did what I thought I had to. So yeah, that's true.
Okay, that's an interesting one. Right? So how do you kind of when you said, you explore, it's more of the tech thing because you were chief of staff, then you moved into the data scientist role, right? That's more around tech part. I mean, how did the second thing happen into the VC role, right? That's a little different, a little deviated as such. How did you get into that area?
Yeah. So chief of staff was heavily business oriented,
Yeah,
which
yeah.
was completely like, the CEO's critical projects. I would end up spending a lot of time on those.
Uh-huh.
Then I moved to like a deep technical role, like chief of
Right.
staff. I would talk 20 people a day at least within the company.
Mm-hmm.
And as a data scientist, I would talk to like 20 people a month, probably at best. Like if I don't want to, I don't talk to people. I just do my work and, keep working on the code. Like, yeah. So both of those sides, when I could see, right, both as how you build that product as well as how you sell that product out. So that was like the combination that really worked for me, in the sense that when I was looking at a startup, and like when I was talking to Axel folks as well, and when I would look at a startup, I would look at it both as a building perspective as well as a selling perspective. So that really, I feel, added like a lot of when I spoke to them and when I joined Axel, or that's where I felt my delta came into the role, that I could do both parts in certain ways, like not really like a pro, but at least get a feeler of both the things. So yeah, and funnily, I looked at a lot of technical categories as well, like dev tools, cybersecurity, right? So that having that technical background also helped in evaluating
Mm-hmm.
startups in these categories in a much more deeper fashion. So yeah.
Okay, that kind of totally makes sense. So it was like building things together and you got an overall picture doing both the roles or end-to-end
Yeah.
role kind of stuff. Okay, that's an interesting one. So how and why DrDroid and the interesting name of DrDroid?
Yeah. So I mean, me and my co-founder Dipesh, both of us are Star Wars fans. So we were like, R2D2 droid. We were like, let's build something which is like, how R2D2 is for humans to, help them do a lot of these mundane things or fix things which are mundane. Like, same ways we were like, can we build a droid which basically helps engineers get their burden of, solving a lot of these common challenges that they have, a lot common issues that come that other team members bring to them, or complaints that are raised. How can some of those be automated, or at least up to a significant extent? So that's where we started as Droid, and then we were exploring, should it be my droid or what should it be? And then it just clicked that DrDroid, like you're building a tool that helps engineers save time in terms of being able to monitor systems better. So what better than a doctor to add to it? So yeah, that's how the name came through.
A
But
very
yeah,
interesting explanation behind this. Seriously, a very good one. I'm impressed. Very good one. Nice, nice, Siddharth. It's nice that you and your friend had the same passion for Star Wars.
I mean, like you sit and watch those 9 movies at once, yeah. And plus, the previous company where we were, Shadowfax, that was like a Lord of the Rings house. Like from our server names to our product names, everything was like, Shadowfax itself is the name of a horse in Lord of the Rings.
Lord of Rings.
So that way, we was like, we were just taking something out of it.
Some
Yeah.
character there. Nice, 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 interesting one. So, Siddharth, if you could talk a little bit more around what the company does, what Dr. Droid company does
Yeah,
all about.
absolutely. So, absolutely. So when we started off, the biggest challenge that we were trying to tackle is how do we help engineers monitor their product better, right? In the sense that currently they could easily monitor what an API is performing like, but a lot of these questions or debugging issues that come around are more around a feature that, hey, this feature is having certain issue, or this functionality is having a certain issue,
Right.
right? It's not just about individual. Uh, a lot of complaints are not that, hey, your API is failing, but it's probably like, hey, the payment's failing, or hey, I'm not able to do certain action. Now, that certain action could be an aggregation of multiple things, right? Like
Yes.
it could be an API call, it could be a Kafka queue in between, there could be multiple other callbacks coming in, bunch of different actions happening. So our entire goal was, how do we help engineers, not just monitor that one API that they built, but also the components before and after it, so that an entire picture can be, monitored better and in a simpler fashion. So yeah, that's basically what we do. Like we help you monitor any asynchronous flow that you might have in a very simplified fashion. Yeah.
Okay, okay. So I think that's very, very crucial, like what you mentioned, right? Sometimes you just say, hey, something is not working, but how relevant is it? I mean, the upstream and downstream is equally important as well, right? Because if something is not working, it's not a standalone compartment or standalone functionality, right? Something
Yeah.
around it is also not working, which is why the core functionality is impacted. Okay, so uh I'm sure you must have been asked this question multiple times. How easy or difficult was it for you to kind of get this started off, given that there are so many monitoring tools that we have in the industry today, right? And what kind of coaxed you or kept you moving to go ahead and get this started, irrespective of multiple tools already available?
Yeah. So I mean, we've used all the tools that exist, and challenge that we're talking about, which is a little more, at least the sense that we got was, like tools. It's really hard to actually instrument anything like this in the existing tools, like to create those joins. You would typically end up sending that data metric within the code and then sending it to the monitoring tool, like let's say a Elastic or a Grafana, doing those joins in real time there, and being able to actually stitch together an independent set of events was like super hard for us. And that's the gap that we saw in the existing tools, and decided to start off. I think, yeah, definitely agreed that the market is super crowded, right? Especially if you look at application performance monitoring, or if you look at the typical network infrastructure monitoring that folks do, a lot of it is definitely crowded. But we do see that there is a significant scope to enable teams to not just monitor APIs, but also monitor end goals in a much more easier fashion, so that like if the goal is aligned to what you're monitoring, then you might automatically improve the business metric as well eventually as an engineer. So yeah, that's been the I would say the core driving principle for us, driving both me and my co-founder to actually keep building on this. And yeah, it's been close to a little more than a year actually. Yeah. And building this out. Yeah.
Okay. How's the journey been so far, and what do you foresee in the
Well,
next few
like
years about Dr. Droid?
I'll I'll say that, like I wouldn't say whether it was easy or tough, but I'll just give you a example of how I think about these journeys. Right. So the time is let's do like a time go, like, can you see my screen?
Yes, yes, 84 days is
Yeah.
what it shows. That's your
Yeah,
okay,
let's
that's
let's
your
just go back in like this is like back in 2019. Okay. And yeah, so the scene is there was this one trip that was like, you go from Manali to Leh on a cycle for like 600 kilometers. But honestly, I didn't know how
600
to cycle.
kilometers, wow.
Yeah, I didn't know how to cycle.
Okay.
And I was like, okay, I don't know how to cycle, but this looks interesting to me, right? Is it worth evaluating going there? I was like, I don't know, but I just took my card out and I made a payment to these to a guide who was actually like doing it. I got one more friend with me, like both of us. Somehow we survived and completed these 10 days of 600 kilometers. And even
Wow.
now, like I mean, it's just that once we decided that's what we wanted to do, then we, just figured out how do we practice enough for it. And even though I don't know if we practice enough for it, but I think just grilled our way through it and it was fun. So yeah. But
My
one thing
God,
about
it
it is
really, sorry to
yeah.
interrupt. It really shows you love challenges, huh?
Yeah, this is one of them, but yeah, I keep doing a lot of such fun challenges. Yeah, see
Yeah,
this was one of the roads where there were like 20 turns. So
yeah, yeah, yeah.
but yeah, it's
Nice.
very good. Just like yeah. But
Superb.
yeah, I would say that startups are also like a fun ride. Some of the days are like up and some of the days are like down, but you just need to be a little more. I think yeah, I've been thinking about it, and it came to me when somebody told me about, like, somebody didn't tell me about it, but I was reading some other things and it clicked me. There's two things that I feel are super critical, especially in an early stage startup, that I've been trying to inculcate. I wouldn't say I'm really good at it, but
Mhm.
they're in the immediate short term, you need to have a sense of urgency, and in a mid to long term, you need to have patience, like urgency for inputs and patience for outputs, because most of our experiments tend to fail. So that's the formula that I try to keep in my mind, back of my mind, whenever I'm trying to work on things, that on a day-to-day basis, I need to have a sense of urgency to do things. But on a results wise, I don't know whether everything that I do right now will get me results, but that does not mean I don't put in the effort there. So yeah, just keep doing that, and hopefully some things have impact to a larger audience than you do. So
Well, I
yeah,
think that was very well said, right? Urgency for now to get things going and patience to see the results for the in the longer run, right? So,
I mean,
sorry,
I
go
mean, that's how you convince yourself that you're not gonna die. How else? Right?
Okay, so would this be something that keeps you pushing on the days that are not so good?
Yeah, I mean, to help me get in the discipline, sometimes this
Mhm.
is what helps me going there. Yeah.
Okay. I'm sure you, there are these two common terms that they use in the industry, right? Uh, Motivation kind of gets you started, but consistency and discipline is what gets you going, right?
Yeah,
How
yeah.
much do you kind of follow that or believe in that, or what's your take on that? And has that kind of also helped you in what you're doing currently?
Yeah, I mean, motivation is always great for short term, but once you want mid and long term, like, along with motivation, you need the other two. You can't let go of motivation, because then if you don't have that motivation, then what's the point of doing anything? So I
Mm,
would say that it's not like motivation is not needed after a point. I would say motivation is a given, but there are other things also that you actually need to act. And even after that, it's like not necessary that you get the right results that you're looking for,
okay.
right?
How
So
do you deal with something when you don't get the right results?
I mean, like I said, you have to keep putting in the inputs and something comes out. You have to keep trying on it, right? So yeah.
Okay. So you kind of look at it as a learning and stepping
Yeah,
stone,
yeah,
if we could
absolutely.
say
Just
that.
keep building, and you need to just create value for people. So if you can create value, then there's no stopping. So yeah.
Okay, so your end goal or is to create value for people, something, identify the gap and kind of add more value out there.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Okay, that's a good one. Now, how see, when you get a lot of pushbacks, right? See, from IIT, you did your own startup early on, then you also worked in different companies and again a startup. Was there how many, I wouldn't say people, what was the kind of support or opposition that you received from, people around, friends and family, and how did you go about it?
I think generally, at least in my circle, most folks like are either like my family is been in business, like my
Okay,
dad is built his own business, so that way it's been very supportive for me both at home as well as in my friends network. Like
okay,
everybody around me is in the startup ecosystem or is trying to get into the startup ecosystem. So people,
right,
I
right.
think that ways it's been super lucky for me that the ecosystem around me has been great. And I think for anyone, even if they want to start up, I would say the best first step is not to necessarily start up right away, but join a startup at least in the ecosystem that exists, and start to get a flavor of things, because that really helps you build that early set of ecosystem for yourself to be able to throw questions at, get brainstorming done, be your support system, take your shittiest ideas and not say that, dude, this is shit, but like maybe this is what is probably going to be the game changer, right? Like if, if you think about a lot of these startups, people might be like, oh, is that even an idea? What is that? Right? But it can be whatever. It can change into anything, right? Like stupid ideas become crazy companies sometimes. So, and to appreciate a stupid idea, you need people who have worked in places that have failed, right? So failed or have been at the verge of failing. So that way I'd say that joining a startup is like probably the best step folks should do if they want to start up in the longer run. And I think for me, Shadowfax was like that experience, which I did
Mhm.
not get when I started up in the first time versus now. I think I do see the difference in terms of having worked at that startup. Yeah,
Oh, okay. So you do see that difference already.
absolutely. Yeah, yeah.
Okay, I think that was very good one, Siddharth, what you just mentioned, right? Uh,
Hmm.
it leads to crazy ideas with the kind of people that you work with, or crazy ideas lead to big organizations, the thing that you mentioned, right? Different organizations, right? And also the one that you mentioned, I think a lot of them now want to get into the startup mode, especially since the COVID times, right? And I don't know if a startup appears to be always chaotic, right? And
Yeah.
how much effort or patience do you have to be in such a chaotic environment and still deliver? I think it's something, it's very individual based, right? So,
Absolutely. In fact, this has been something that when I was in the VC, I would help folks join different startups. And after a
oh,
point,
okay.
I realized,
Uh-huh.
not everybody is cut out for the same kind of startups,
Right.
right? And funnily, I have to share my screen again. This time
Sure.
it's LinkedIn newsletter. Yeah, I should be this one. So I started writing a few blogs around, how could one uh, decide what startup to join or not join, right? How do you make those decisions? And like, I wrote bunch of articles around, is it a seed stage startup that's best for you, or a series B, or a growth stage, like all of those things. I tried to summarize in a bunch of articles, share it with folks, and starting with the same point, like you said, that hey, not everybody is not everybody needs to join a startup, or not everybody is is a right fit in that chaotic environment. So like different scales of startups have different chaos. Like a 5 people company versus a 500 people startup would be very different chaos levels, and where you could decide, right? Like if you've been in a very stable environment for a very long time, it might make sense for you to join a series D or a E, or maybe a Flipkart kind of scale startup,
Mhm.
even though it's not a startup, but it's technically in that energy zone, I would say.
Right,
So
right.
we start there and then go down into that slow path, or just maybe take a leap of faith if you're to risk friendly, right? So I'd say, yeah, that's how I would put it.
Okay, okay, very good one, Siddharth. Thank you so much. I mean, that was definitely insightful. You're one of the you're one of the youngest guests on my talk.
Well,
I've
I would
always
say that I am one of the oldest in my team. So yeah, it's a tricky place.
I think it differs where you are and what role you play in different areas. So that was very, very insightful and useful. I think I also learned quite a lot from this. Especially I've always been in the monitoring area. That's been the operations field monitoring has been my core. And like what you just mentioned, I think that's one of the key missing factors today. It does not directly tell us where the problem is, right? I can take this conversation offline and we can talk for a longer period. But I think I also figured that out. And I think that's very, very core, because today most of the monitoring systems tell you at a higher level as what is broken. But then you have to drill down to figure out what exactly and where it's broken and how it kind of stitches together with the other components in the chain. Right. I think that's a great gap that you kind of identified and are, working on bridging it. So all the very best for that. And it was a great conversation on how your thoughts about how to start up and why a startup, why not IIT, and how chaotic it is, and if you want to have a startup, that you should be part of it, and how you kind of manage
No,
your ups and
absolutely.
downs.
I used to like I until a few months back, I used to help folks join startups run by my friends. Like there are a lot of these Series B, C companies that I know of, right? And
Okay.
I would always try to refer people there, but now suddenly I'm out of bandwidth for anything else. For good or for bad, but I've not been able to, diligently do that. But yeah, I would absolutely recommend that, if you want to start up, if you're feeling too uncomfortable, but you want to start up, at least join one, right? And people at startups are paying like whatever you might be earning, they'll pay. So it's not that that's going to be a reason why you cannot join one. So I would say, yeah.
Yeah, I know. Well said, well said. I would totally agree on the last few statements that you mentioned.
Yeah.
I don't want to quote anything out there. Right.
Absolutely.
Perfect,
Yeah.
perfect, Siddharth. Thank you so much for taking time,
Yeah.
right? Especially on a weekday evening and doing this. And very best with the Dr. Droid.
Thanks. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Siddharth. You have a great evening.
You too. Bye-bye.
Hey everyone, I hope you had great takeaways from this conversation with Siddarth Jain. The most important factor, I think, is about he being a very challenging person, kind of drove him to where he is today of experimenting and actually being successful at it as well. The keenness to go in and identify gaps and create the value add is where kind of gives you the room to identify new things and create your own space around that and grow in that. I think that's the core behind Siddarth and his co-founder behind this company, DrDroid. And I think the most important things, like he said, if you're in a startup or if you want to have your own startup, the short term and the long term, like urgency is very important in short terms, and whereas patience is very important in long term. So do leave your comments and any suggestions, and talk to you very soon in the next episode. Thank you.